You, Hans, welcome.
Thank you, Barbas.
You came very on time.
Absolutely.
Hans, I will leave the floor to you, but before leaving the floor to you, I want to give a brief introduction about you.
Mhm.
You are a very well-known name of corporate life. Uh, the latest, I think, company you were in the leading team was Deloitte, and
Well, not in the leading team.
yes,
I led the research for the EMEA region.
yes, and so I think it is good to hear from you how your course is going to support the participants and for example, I am an entrepreneur. Am I the correct profile for your course? Or it would be better if I would be working for a big company and join your course as an employee of this company, or it would be much better if my company would get in. I mean, would connect you with a team of the company to take this course.
Yeah.
Floor is yours. Could you please also introduce yourself a little bit more about your background and then about your course, please?
Yes, thank you very much, Barbas. So, my name is Hans van Grieken. I have had senior research roles within companies such as Capgemini, Ernst& Young, Gartner, and recently in Deloitte as the EMEA research leader for the technology space. I'm also a supervisory board member for the past 13 years, and I have been teaching on different Dutch business schools, Nijrode, University of Tilburg, and the Tech Trends program of the Technical University in Delft. So, as part of my job, I've seen, I can probably say, thousands of companies across the world. And when you and I met in the past, our thinking was that some of the lessons learned from the technology space in the startup world have a lot of relevance for medium-sized and big organizations as well. And so that is more or less the course that I will be bringing to the WBAF Business School. And so I'm going to share some slides with you. Please confirm, Baibas, if you can see them. Um, is that correct? Yeah. Okay. So this course is actually for executive business and technology teams, joint teams. So this is very important. I mean, organizations, whether they're in the public or the private sector, will be digital. And so this digital aircraft carrier, let's call it like that, needs to be modernized. So the format is lectures, which are combined with discussions and hands-on experiences from the participants. It is a total of 11 different courses.
Uh,
And the time
Hans,
is, yes,
Hans, Hans, I think you are recording the session, which is fine, but we are also hearing your recording. This is what I am thinking.
oh, okay. I apologize
May-
for that.
No, no, you can record, no problem. But
No,
if you
I'm not
unmute it,
recording. I'm not recording. So
but
something must be going wrong.
I,
Now it's gone or not? For some reason, it's started another different. So let me just stop that here for a moment and
okay, please.
get back to you in a moment. Okay.
No, no, you can record, no problem. But if you unmute it, but
I can hear you, and it's not me that is doing this, Baibas,
okay,
I'm
okay.
afraid.
Let me check just a second because okay, now there is silence.
Yes, it's not
Yes,
me. That's what I
I,
thought.
I didn't
Okay,
make any. Okay, let's.
no
Yes,
worries.
it is done. Okay.
Okay. So the course is consisting. I can still hear you and I talk in the back, but
Okay.
let me just phone in again.
Please.
Uh, is it now still there or not?
Yeah, yeah, you can start again, please.
Okay, just edit this out. Okay, so the course is basically geared at medium-sized and big organizations that feel that they need to digitally transform and get the benefits of what has been developed in the startup world. So it's a total of 11 different elements over the course of 11 weeks. The average investment of time will be 3.5 hours, and that will include an online instruction, homework, but also a lot of interaction between the participants to learn from each other. What is very important too is that this is the framework. So we start with a generic introduction to the framework, which I'll show you in a moment. And then we take a deep dive for each of the courses into each of these shifts in order to end up at the 11th one, which is all about how do you bring all this together. Now, the whole premise behind this is that there always will be new technology, whether you get it, whether you like it. And so organizations need to learn how to adapt and to implement these new technologies within the context of an already existing organization, which in a lot of cases has technology legacy, is changing direction or strategy, is doing acquisitions, all kinds of changes that need to be catered for. So the thinking of my colleague, Dr. Andries van Dijk, and myself when I wrote, and by the way, this material was developed as in the context of my work at Deloitte, and Deloitte graciously allows me to use this material for WBAF. But the thinking we had was that, first of all, the way in which the business asks the technology team to support is changing dramatically. And so let's start at the left side of the model. The first change is that the business wants the tech team, whether that tech team lives in the business or in the IT department, it wants it to deliver technology rapidly. And so the model just doesn't look only into the tech itself, but also into ways of working, configuration of the workforce. It looks beyond the tech, so to say. The second very important part is that this element of rapid, successive, and at scale. Starting with the first one, rapidly means that organizations need to be able to implement technology much faster. You know, when I started in tech, SAP was just about to enter the market, and companies could take 5 years to think and rethink and consider, should I be investing in an ERP system? Nowadays, these new technologies have a life cycle of about 2 years. So when you don't get it, or you don't even observe them, you might be too late. So rapid deployment of technology is an important one. It should be successive, as in organizations are faced with a lot of different technologies. So it should be a repetitive piece of work, a machinery of minimal viable products that allows you to quickly deploy new technology when it works, or to kill it when it doesn't work. And finally, it needs to be designed to scale. That is something we can learn from the startup world. They work in this way. So how can you create technology components that are relatively easy to scale? Now, I will also in this first module dive into the changing roles and responsibilities of tech leadership, because that is changing dramatically. You know, the traditional CIO is sort of fading away. And important to that is to what is best in class? You know, what does that look like? And finally, this is meant to be a common framework, a language between business and the tech, in order to really define what the future operating model of the technology looks like, wherever that lives in the organization, whether it's the IT department or in the business. So that is model number one. Modules number 2 to 4 are all about the first 3 shifts. So the first one is all about the move to agile ways of working, scaled agile, DevSecOps, security that is inherently embedded into the operating model, and moving the risk needle in the sense that a lot of let's say, minimal viable product, agile ways of working also allow for fast experimentation, for which you have to cater and have to have an appetite in terms of risk. The second one is to help organizations design some sort of a radar screen of what's out there, to help them define a portfolio of initiatives. And how do you manage an innovation portfolio? And a very important one, a lot of vendors in the market in these days are very much interested in joint development of new skills and new capabilities, and therefore to define what your ecosystem should be looking like going forward is an important part of module number 3. And then the final module, in which I will dive into shift number 3, is a really important one from, let's say, the perspective of who owns the technology. Where does it live? Does it live in IT? Does it live in a business entity? How can you organize for this? These are major important decisions to take, and they change most of the time the whole way in which technology is perceived in terms of end-to-end processes and end-to-end customer journeys or citizens' journeys when it's a public sector organization. Moving on to the second part, which is 3 other different shifts to be taking place. Number 4, which we will be discussing in module number 5, is all about the configuration of the current and the future workforce. What roles will be more or less fading away because we robotize them away? What new roles should be on your radar screen that currently might not be available in the organization, but should be for the future? And what roles, current roles, are changing because of these new technologies, the move to cloud, agile ways of working, and so forth. And the second part that will be part of this discussion is what are the operating principles within those people who have to work? And very important when you talk about skills, which of these skills should I have myself as an organization? I own them versus this is a type of skills that I could easily source out or hire with external vendors. Number 5 is all about the ability to organize the funding and the governance model so that it caters for this new world. I mean, just as an example, if you're moving to agile ways of working, then obviously part of the agile way of working is to create minimal viable products and sometimes even more than one. And by means of growth hacking, you try new propositions in the market, new different versions of an app, for instance. And based on the data, you decide what lives and what dies. So the scale or fail type of approach to technology needs to be funded. And when you have a traditional IT budget, which is more or less put into concrete at the beginning of the year, and it identifies project management and design, build, run principles, waterfall, and so forth, that just does not fit with an end-to-end customer journey or an end-to-end citizens journey. In other words, the funding of tech and the governance on top of that needs to be redesigned as well. And then the last one, number 7 in this line of modules, is all about the non-techie part. It's all about leadership. It's about the capability to create different elements in your approach, different leadership styles, give autonomy to your teams, all kinds of different examples that you could mention there. And then finally, when we move to the right side of this model, the last 3 shifts, they are really tech shifts. The first one being the move that we see in the market from digital experience, that's apps and that's websites and so forth. And a lot of companies and public sector organizations are deeply involved in that, towards digital reality. That means digital twins, Internet of Things, augmented reality, all kinds of ways to convey reality in digital terms to users quickly and much more advanced. The second one is the move from data analytics, business intelligence, data lakes. A lot of organizations are into that or moving towards that, towards the next phase, which will be all about cognitive, predictive models, deep learning, and somewhere along the way, artificial intelligence. And then finally, the 10th module, which is number 9 in the 9 shifts, is the move from cloud architecture, whether it's hybrid, public, or private, towards platforms. Platforms are a major move in the world. I mean, this WBAF learning environment is a typical example of a platform. And so that is also something that a lot of organizations need to be diving into. So these are the last 3 of the shifts, which I will be discussing in modules 8, 9, and 10. And then finally, we move to the last one, which is module 11, because there we will try to more or less connect all of these dots. The first observation that is very important is that there's nothing new here for a lot of people, a move to cloud, agile way of working, etc., etc. What is important here is to realize that all of these shifts are relevant and highly interconnected. And it's important for organizations to find the real relevant connections that apply to your future operating model and your organization. As I've run workshops using this model across the world over the past 2 years, I can tell you there's no one size fits all. Every big or relatively big organization is unique and therefore needs to have its own analysis in place. We, the management team, need to synchronize them. And so what I hope to teach my students is to convince their own organization that the organization needs to take responsibility for this, both the tech side as well as the business side. I've been around in tech for a long time, and I can tell you that business people always like the sexy stuff of technology. Let's do IoT, let's do AI, but they don't care about the AS400 that is in the cellar and that contains vital data from your customers. And this framework helps you to address this, to take the pain and identify it, because all of these 9 shifts have an impact that transcends the IT department. It is a corporate affair because it will involve pain, whether it's people, different roles, or laying off people, recruiting new people, whether it's risk, are we going to do this? Are we going to trial this? And how many are we going to trial? Or time, how much time do we have? How fast should we be? How much disruption can we expect from new entrants in the fintech world or whatever? So that is what this is all about. It's about causalities between these different forces and to make them relevant in the context of your business or your public sector organization. And to give you finally an example of what that looks like, let's assume there's an organization that has identified our ability to bring alive new technology is just too slow. We take too much time. We're not equipped to do that. Okay, so in terms of the analysis and the framework, the major forces we're talking about is to innovate rapidly. That's what you're not doing. And the one we start off from is this one, the ability to work agile, to shift towards DevOps and over time, and to scale the enterprise scaled type of agile across the board. So if that is what you want to do, then there is obviously a very straightforward relationship with a technology strategy that over time wants to move to cloud, sometimes referred to as a cloud first strategy. That makes sense. One has a positive relationship with 9. 9 is going to help you to do one to become faster. And moreover, it will help you to take care of your data in a much more advanced way, because all of these cloud players have really nice environments in which you can do that. And most of these players, and the example I'm giving you here is an energy company using a low-code platform, where it will allow you to dramatically increase the attractiveness and the, let's call this appeal of the apps that you're creating and the speed at which you do that. Another one is because it lives in the cloud, it is scalable by design. So this is an organization that is present in 16 different countries. And so the decision to be faster, moving to agile with the implication to invest into a low-code cloud platform automatically delivers scalability. It also delivers access to other players that already live in that cloud environment. That could be part of the ecosystem and the company wants to create. And actually, that is what happened in this particular case that I have in mind, which will allow the organization to bring a repetitive element into their innovation portfolio. Now, there's no free lunch, and the red ones here illustrate some of the showstoppers that need to be taken into consideration. If one third of your current IT team is in infrastructure management and you've just decided that you're going to move to the public cloud, then it doesn't take any rocket science to understand that part of that team needs to go. On the other side, you will need cloud brokers and cloud architects that understand that cloud environment. So that's a relatively negative one if you do not address it. Another one is the real important decision about where do these agile teams live? Do they live in the business, under the control of the business, with a mandate from the business? Do they live in the IT department and are they commissioned to the business, or something in between? There's really best practices across the world of the different versions of what you could do. But if you do not address this, there will be war, and you should prevent that. Here's another one. If you move towards agile ways of working, then one of the consequences is that most of the traditional IT budgets simply do not support that move. They do not support it in terms of risk, the willingness to take a certain risk into account, or the willingness to have an end-to-end responsibility for a certain process or customer journey. And that also has a relationship with portfolio, because I already know of examples in which a company, an outside vendor company, would say, why don't you, instead of paying us by the hour, why don't you pay us for the value delivered in your customer experience, in some of the parameters that we decide upon that are really important to you? Because the nature of this type of work is that the parameters on which you define what value is, business value, public sector value, they change. And so this is just to give you an idea of the type of discussions we shall be having amongst ourselves in this course. It will help you to equip yourself, and through you, your organization, to have this conversation, to identify your boosters and your showstoppers, and to help your senior management to get an overall picture of what the characteristics of the future tech operating model should look like, what investments need to be taken, what hard calls and decisions need to be identified and decided upon, and what, let's say, the operating model could be looking like in the future. So my name is Hans Verrieke, as I said. I have some experience in this space, both as a teacher as well as a researcher for some of the renowned consulting firms in the world. And it would be my pleasure to be part of your course and your educational journey through the technology space. So with that, I give it back to you, Baibas.
Thank you very much, Hans. It was a great presentation, and I think anyone who has questions in the future can get in contact with you through LinkedIn too, isn't it, directly?
Yeah, it's okay. So what works best, to be honest, is not to do this course as an individual. What works
Yes.
best is to do it in a combination of somebody from the tech side, the CTO or the CIO, and somebody from the business side, chief architect, chief commerce officer, or a policy person in the public sector domain, to make sure that there's an understanding of how these things fit together on both sides of the aisle, if I may use that word. So both the tech side as well as the business side. And very important, this is an attempt to bring in some of the lessons learned and the best practices from the startup world into the corporate world. That's what this is all about.
Yeah, I think this will also be very instrumental for companies for companies who want to who give importance to entrepreneurship.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Well, that's a good point, Baiba. So You and I, we don't know which new technologies are out there in 5 years. I mean, we have some sense of what that might be. And so the whole premise behind this is, I always use the metaphor of an aircraft carrier. When you're a big organization, you have a lot of tech. And some of that tech is old, needs to be decommissioned. That's the first one. You need to have a modern aircraft carrier. The second one is you need to be capable of adapting new technologies when they arrive. And you need to have a way of working that identifies what works and what doesn't work. So you need to have data. So you need to have capabilities to draw conclusions from those data, growth hacking. So this whole approach of redefining the aircraft carrier and starting new speedboats at a rapid pace and define this one will be put on the platform because it works, and this one we can just sink off because it doesn't work. That whole way of working is, to a lot of big organizations, fundamentally different from what they do now. And not just on the tech side. Most of them have a lot of waterfall, a lot of legacy. They're moving their ERP from A to B. They have problems identifying the relevant data, let alone get intelligence out of those data. Their workforce is aging, and meanwhile, they're getting eaten by the startup world that is entering their world. So for a lot of organizations, this is also a sort of a call, get yourself in shape for the next war. And this is the way to do it.
I think we can also, I mean, maybe I am right, maybe I am wrong. You correct me. This is a roadmap for companies who want to boost innovation within the company to compete in the industry.
Yes. Well, that's a fair point, but I just want to make this remark. It is boosted in the context of an already existing technology landscape. So the difference with a startup, obviously, is the startup starts from nothing. There is no legacy. There is no technology. I mean, that's obviously no, but you know what I mean. When you're big or relatively big, there's other technology, other business entities. But nevertheless, you have to go through this growth curve, and that's why I'm using the metaphor of an aircraft carrier. The CIO, which is the captain of the aircraft carrier, or the CTO, does not decide what's the next war to fight. But he or she is the person that has to run a tight ship so that you will be able to fight the next war. And so to make the technology operating model future-proof, that is what this is all about. Because there's one thing that is, at least to people like yourself and me, beyond any doubt, part of your competitive advantage in the future will be digital, will be your ability to adapt to these new digital technologies. And so to organize yourself for this, instead of doing this incident by incident. I mean, in my previous job, I've been involved in big organizations that just literally say, my bank is not going to make it anyway. So help me to create a new bank outside of the existing bank, to start a startup bank that literally needs to eat the old bank. In the Deloitte world, that's called an edge play. And some companies do that, but the majority of companies don't have the money, don't have the time, don't have the appetite, and their shareholders will not allow it. So they have to really redefine the technology operating in order to be innovative, to be faster, and all the nice things we discussed earlier, Bas.
I think post-pandemic economies and post-pandemic business environments will need such kind of skills more.
Well, it's a fact that because I've been into this space for a long time, that the companies that I'm still in contact with across the world, it's a fact that their ability to work with these big disruptions or small ones like COVID dramatically increased simply because they have their operating model in place. I mean, we don't know what the future will bring. It might be big, next type of COVID. It might be small, the next fintech that is trying to eat your business. So your ability to be as flexible as possible and meanwhile have a core that is defendable, that is scalable by design, a team that can work with that and obviously strategies to support that. That is very important. So the whole premise behind this is we turn this around. We don't start with there is this new technology, this new business model or this opportunity. No, we start with whatever happens, it will be new technology, and you need to be able to deal with that.
Exactly. Dear Hans, thank you very much.
My
And
pleasure.
I'm inviting all participants to visit the WBF Business School website, wbs.wbf.org. Please go to contents part and go to business transformation documents. And you will find this course details in this document, which is downloadable, by the way. And in the faculty members part, there is another message of Hans van Grieken. Please watch it too. In the registration part, you can also learn about the course prices, dates, etc. Dear Hans, thank you very much for joining us today.
It was my pleasure.
Let's
Enjoy
keep
the
in
rest of
touch.
the webcast. Bye-bye.
Let's okay, bye bye. Thank you.